Hi, folks. I'm Dan. Welcome. And this is, you are?
I'm Emily. Nice to be here.
All right. We're going to talk about the bill to decriminalize marijuana. That is, according to Drudge Report yesterday, I'm getting dressed again. Where's my, here we go. All right. Apparently Barney Frank and Ron Paul are introducing a bill in Congress to decriminalize on a federal level the possession of marijuana. And I'm thinking that's going to be a topic folks are going to want to think about there. So first of all, what are your thoughts from 10,000 feet in the air before I find this story and pull it up?
I think it'll be interesting to see who is ready to jump on and support it. I'd be surprised if they do get a good amount of support. It sounds like I don't know. I can't imagine that this would actually go through right now. Everything is way too polarized for them to get, enough cooperation and votes for it to go anywhere. But it's interesting that they'd choose now to do it.
I agree. And I'm going to pull the thing up here. Also in the news is this decision, they released 60 million barrels of oil.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how long that lasts, but it doesn't seem like a lot to me. And apparently the oil prices are plunging, according to, what's a plunge here? It's down in about $91 a barrel, down from 94, $3 a barrel.
Mm-hmm.
What's a barrel? 32 gallons?
No idea.
But anyway, so
the Post is saying that it's the largest coordinated effort for oil release ever in the history of time, I guess. So, I mean, this may be a big deal. It may help. Although, I don't know, our gas prices here in Lynchburg have gone down by a lot as of late. So I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty happy at the pump. I'm like $5 less than I used to be. So,
tell us how your search is going for an apartment.
Well, I finally got in touch with a realtor today, and it's been a new experience for me because here in Lynchburg, most of the realtors that are working with rental properties don't actually bring you around to the houses, so you get a set of keys and you kind of have to go do it yourself. It's a little weird. Last time I looked for an apartment was in Boston, and realtors were very into finding you the right place and really got into putting people in apartments. And here it's been a little hands off, I feel, on the side of the realtors. But I did go look at a fair amount of houses today and found a couple that look like they might be decent. So I'm haggling a little on the price on one of them with the real estate agency, so we'll see. We might have a home come tomorrow, so I'll be nice.
All right. Okay, from the Seattle Post Intelligencer, let's look at this story. This is news, obviously. Representatives Frank and Paul, let states legalize pot. A bipartisan team, Representative Barney Frank, Democrat, Massachusetts, and Ron Paul, Republican. Getting an ad over this. This is, again, from the SeattlePI.com. Ron Paul and Barney Frank will introduce federal legislation that will permit states to legalize, regulate, tax, and control marijuana without federal interference. Legislation will be unveiled Thursday by Frank, an outspoken local Democrat, and the Libertarian Paul, who's running for the 2012 Republican presidential nomination. The bill would limit the U.S. government role in marijuana enforcement to interdiction of cross-border or interstate smuggling. Citizens will be able to legally grow, use, or sell cannabis in states which have legalized the forbidden weed. The legislation is the first bill to be introduced in Congress that would end federal marijuana prohibition. In a preview of the legislation, the Marijuana Policy Project noted that last week marked the 40th anniversary of when President Nixon declared the federal government was at war with marijuana and other drugs. So there you have it. What do you? Now my audio's up. Okay, what do you? It seems to me that the current policy, what it ends up doing is it takes a bunch of young people and turns them into criminals, and it's not working.
Yeah, I mean, basically, by keeping marijuana illegal, the argument is that things that could be regulated and very out in the open, and in the way that medicinal pot has worked, are instead being handled by drug dealers. And the argument, one really excellent argument that I've heard, is that by keeping pot illegal, you're essentially making sure that it's a gateway drug. If people weren't going to, drug dealers to buy their pot and were going to a pharmacy instead, that there would be less of a chance that a pharmacist isn't going to say, hey, so now you have your pot, want to try some crack, or what have you. So I think that there's arguments on both sides, but this might be a step, at least to bringing the conversation out to the forefront.
This came up in the Republican debate, the presidential debate. The first one I think was on Fox News. Oddly, the Republican debate on Fox. Anyway, it was Ron Paul said, okay, they asked the question about it. They said, how many people are gonna, if they legalize it today, heroin, how many of you are going to start using heroin? And everyone just, looked, well, of course not. So, I'm not, I don't think I'm for legalizing heroin, but I think if some hippie wants to go in the woods and smoke a joint, I don't think they're hurting anyone. And it's like anything else. It just, making it, and all the people who are for, then they go to some party and slam brews all night. On a state level and a federal level. I talked to somebody who worked in Richmond at the Capitol, and he said, if you went to every party put on by these PACs, that you would leave, during the General Assembly session, you would leave the drunkest, fattest person in the state. But then pot, because it's not socially acceptable among that clique, and I don't smoke pot, I don't drink alcohol. I drink coffee. But and it's decaf, so I'm not an advocate personally. But who cares? I don't see why I don't care. I don't want to spend tax dollars on this, and it's just the amount of money, and you're locking up these kids, giving them a criminal record because they smoke a plant. It's mind-numbingly a waste of resources when we should be concentrating on crimes that have victims.
Yeah. And I mean, the fact of the matter is that marijuana is not, is not physically addictive in the way that nicotine is, or many other drugs. Addictions to marijuana come psychologically. So, in the same way you could be addicted to decaf coffee, for example. So I think that, the mentality behind making it illegal to begin with was pretty shaky, and it's a good thing that it's being talked about. It's an issue that should be talked about. This whole concept of a war on drugs is, just gets thrown in with all of our other wars on, abstract concepts that we don't quite understand what's going on in the background. So if marijuana could be taken out of that war, it might be very helpful for our country.
Well, of course, a lot of it's supply and demand. I remember seeing this story that the last police officer was kidnapped, or killed, or quit in some town in Mexico. There's like one left finally, and they suffer. I think it was a she. I don't know. If it were legal, and I'm not just talking medicinal. I'm talking, grow it, have an age limit. But I mean, how many people die from alcohol accidents every year? I don't know anybody who's died. I'm sure they have, but I don't know anybody. I mean, you don't hear about someone who's just high on pot, killing someone driving. I'm sure, I'm sure I'm wrong, but except I'm saying from my personal, studying the news. And you can argue it's a gateway drug, blah blah blah. I'm just saying we spent all this money. on this fight, and it just seems logical that we're not going to win it. We're pulling out of Afghanistan. We might as well pull out of this one.
But the reason it's a gateway drug is because people have to buy it from drug dealers. I mean, if you bought pot in a drugstore, you know, instead of on a street corner, how would pot still be a gateway drug? I mean, I think that's the only reason. I think that if you don't have access to the underbelly of the drug world, that you're not going to jump from, in the same way you wouldn't jump from like Sudafed to meth, I guess, which is a whole nother level. I have allergies a lot and take a good amount of Sudafed, and I feel a little weird having to present my license at the counter to buy it, and it's all those dirty meth heads that have ruined my Sudafed experience for me.
All those meth, yeah, I wasn't. Apparently, it's meth. This stuff, I guess it's easy to make, but it's dangerous. And then I've got to get that video of that guy, that activist guy, who was talking about that. But it's legally prescribed. I don't know if it's for weight loss or for attention deficit disorder or something. But the drug that we refer to as meth is actually a legal drug. Mm-hmm. You know, so I'm trying to get Rennie to call. Rennie's supposed to call. He's listening apparently. He said he couldn't hear me, which was accurate earlier. Hopefully not now. If you'd like to call us, what's our number? Let me see here. Our number is 818-688-6625. 818-688-6625. We're here at 3 o'clock every day, live. And so anyway, you got any other stories you want to talk about? Anything you're dying to discuss?
Well, we just found out that the Cantor has decided to pull out of budget talks that Vice President Biden's leading. For those of you who don't know, Eric Cantor is of the great state of Virginia, and also the House Majority Leader. And yeah, he says it's because they've reached an impasse over tax increases, but it's just, I'm not quite sure. And he's still, quote unquote, optimistic about the process and that he sees it moving forward, but really not sure what pulling out of the talks accomplishes for him, or us as a nation, I guess. It's hard to negotiate when you're not there to negotiate, I guess.
Well, but they're trying to make a statement. I mean, this is a whole thing. This is about spending out of control, and I think it's like $4 trillion now. It was $2 trillion, and then Bush, granted 9/11 and 2 wars, pushed it up $1 trillion, and then Obama's pushed it up $1 trillion with healthcare and other things. So this is a nonpartisan issue. It's not like the Democrats or the Republicans have a lock on frugality or thriftiness or what have you. Both parties did this. The Republicans spent like drunken sailors, and the Democrats, of course, have outdone the Republicans in that. And you got to stop at some point. You can't. They're trying the FDR approach to get us out. They're trying to spend, and folks are saying, this is just too much, and we want to cut. And here in Virginia, I just got a thing from Bob McDonnell, an email today from his staff saying that Virginia has just been named the 3rd highest in the United States. Virginia's economy. Let's see here. Again, this is from the governor's office, so this is pro-governor because they wrote it, but it's accurate. The American Legislative Exchange Council has released the 4th edition of Rich States, Poor States, rating states in 15 categories of economic competitiveness. Virginia's rank in economic outlook has improved from 8th in the nation last year to 3rd in the report released yesterday. Virginia now holds the highest ranking east of the Mississippi and is the only mid-Atlantic state to rank in the top 20. And it's basically, he cut spending, and it's paying dividends. We're 3rd best in the country.
Yeah, but these budget talks we've been talking about have already done a lot to identify spending cuts. The reason he's pulling out is because he thinks they've reached an impasse when it comes to increasing taxes, which I mean, so obviously we're backhandedly probably talking about the Bush tax cuts, and the fact that, Democrats want to get rid of them and Republicans want to keep them. And it all just boils down to whether or not you believe in the trickle-down effect of economics, which, frankly, we've been trying for the past decade, and obviously it hasn't quite worked out for us.
Trickle down. Republicans are good at, or better than Democrats are at naming things, like the death tax. Hard to defend that.
Yeah.
The estate tax, and then one says pro-life, and Democrats call that anti-abortion extremists. So both sides are good at naming things, and one of the trickle-down effect is, I'm not sure who came up with that, but
it's from an economics professor. I mean, the whole theory is from an economics academic. It got adopted into neoconservatism really early, and has been used as a theory forever. It just hasn't really been put into practice as much until we saw, Bush did a great job at cutting taxes for the wealthy. And the idea here is that by cutting taxes for the wealthy, you allow them to spend more, which in turn helps the economy and helps everyone else lower than them on the money spectrum, I guess. But
wealthy being defined as?
I really don't know what wealthy is defined as for the Bush
tax cuts.
Yeah.
How many poor people have given you a job, Emily? That's the argument.
Well, no rich people have given me a job either, though, Dan.
I'm the only poor person who's given Emily a job.
You can say what you want about the poor, but
I'm just saying that what they're talking, it's a false argument on both sides. The Republicans are basically friendlier to the rich people and business, and the Democrats are friendlier to unions and, giving a leg up to the common working man, or whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is. You look at who donates, right? And they both, I've said on this show before, I've said that I agree with the Democrats on certain things. I agree with the Republicans on certain things. I think we're spending too much money. You can't continue to spend. And we're spread out all around the world, and we're spending like drunken sailors. And as Reverend Wright said, our chickens are coming home to roost. The Democrats are good on some things, like the Republicans say, "Oh, no regulation." We talked about net neutrality, which we both vehemently agree on. That I don't, or do we? But I don't want to get off on a tangent. But certain things like having ingredients on food, the calorie count. I'm for making the fast food chains put right on there. Enjoy your triple, awesome greasy, mega meal burger, and by the way, it has 1,700 calories right on the menu board. And that's burdensome. No, I don't think it's burdensome for some big chain. I'm not talking some mom and pop shop, some lady who cooks different home cooked food every day for her 80 customers. I'm not talking about her, but big chains. I think that's reasonable. We're getting fatter, and the Republicans say, "Oh, that's burdensome regulation." I don't agree. You need some things. I mean, we don't want. I'm for example, meat inspection. I think it's a good thing that they inspect the meat before we buy it.
Yeah.
But in this case, I really think we're spending too much money, and the Republicans are trying to make a point. And the fact is, it's the last time there was this pissing contest, it was with Clinton and Newt Gingrich, and we were there on the eve of a government shutdown this time. Ironically, Newt Gingrich happened to be in Lynchburg, and I asked him, well, everyone else asked that question. That was the first question. And I think I asked him about Donald Trump or something. That I own 3 tablets. I can't help myself. But
it needed to be done.
It needed to be done. And he gave a great, and that's the answer that made CNN and everything. Anyway, so the thing is, the last time Clinton appeared to have won that battle, and the Republicans were blamed. Newt Gingrich was blamed. He was the villain. The government shut down. And now we're talking about the debt limit, which means, I think since George Washington was president, there's been a legal limit on how much money the federal government could borrow. And they continuously raise it. I don't know what it is. It's a large amount of money. Probably more than anyone listening or watching has on their credit card bill. And
Hopefully.
hopefully. Except Newt Gingrich's jewelry bill may actually exceed.
Yeah, I'm
picking on Newt.
It just came out this week.
Kidding.
He's got an extra $1 million credit line at Tiffany's.
I think he should spread the
another
wealth.
one.
Emily could use some more accessories.
Emily could use some diamonds to take to the pawn shop and pay off her student loans with. You hear that, Newt? I
knew
was
a
the
guy
girl
who
in the
did
blue
that.
dress.
Yeah, I knew a guy who did that. He ended up dying, but not of this. He had financial issues. He was a security guard. This guy was, I think he had been bankrupt. So the only reason he didn't declare bankruptcy was because he had already done it within X number of years. And you can get all this credit after you declare bankruptcy because they know you can't declare bankruptcy again for a certain number of years. Mm-hmm. So they can haunt you and go after you. So I remember once I saw him and he's like, I got a new car. And I said, that's pretty nice, Dennis. And he said, I said, how much was it? He said, $850. Payments are real low. And I was like, you financed an $800 car? And he's like, yeah. And he was a nice guy, funny, great guy. But just not, financially sound. And he would go to Radio Shack when they sold computers. He'd buy a computer on credit at Radio Shack, and then go to the pawn shop immediately with the computer, pawn the computer, get money to pay off other credit bills. And I'm like, oh man, you were digging a hole.
Yeah.
And he ended up dying. This is a sad story. He ended up dying in his mother's house. His mother had passed away earlier. He ended up dying. And they found that he had had a heart attack. He was obese. He had had a heart attack. He was on the ground with the phone in his hand, like he wanted to call the 911, but his phone had been cut off.
Oh God.
And that's horrible. But that's the fact. And I've always thought, I guess this is the Democrat side of me, because I'm right of center, pretty much. But on this, I think when they cut your phone off, 911 should work.
Yeah, that's completely true.
All my liberal friends will probably agree with me there. So I know you came armed with a number of topics to discuss, Emily. So let me go ahead and hand it over to you while I glance through. Let me see if anyone's calling in. Rainey's still not called in. Okay, your mic appears to be malfunctioning.
Mine?
What do you think about all these hackers? I guess they got the one guy.
This in London or somewhere in the UK, yeah. The guy who hacked the CIA, and he was like 17 or 18, of course, right out of pick your favorite teenage hacker movie from the 90s. I think Hackers was the big one.
The best one, what was it? There was
wasn't there one called Swordfish maybe?
I can't remember. Gosh, I can't remember. There was one, it was Sneakers was one.
That might be
I remember
before my
River
time.
Phoenix was in it, and they did something big for somebody, and they said some rich guy or powerful guy, one of those characters who can do anything. I'll give you anything you want. And all he wanted was the hot girl's phone number. And they're like, okay, so this is interesting. The Supreme Court has struck down a state data mining law. The Supreme Court struck down a law that prohibits the use of prescription drug records for marketing, ruling for free speech rights over a state government's medical privacy concerns. The High Court handed a victory to data mining companies IMS Health and others, which had challenged the law. The companies collect and sell such information. By a 6-3 vote, the justices on Thursday upheld a ruling by a U.S. appeals court that Vermont's law infringed on commercial free speech rights in violation of the First Amendment of the Constitution. The law, adopted in 2007, prohibited the sale, transmission, or use of prescriber-identifiable information for marketing a prescription drug unless the prescribing doctor had consented. Vermont, Maine, and New Hampshire are the only states to have adopted such laws, although similar measures have been proposed in about 25 states in the last 3 years. Pharmaceutical manufacturers use data about a doctor's prescribing habits to better inform their drug salespeople when they visit physician offices to market certain products. What do you think?
I don't know. I'm surprised that this went this way. I mean, I don't think I want a company knowing what drugs I'm on. That's between me and my doctor. And it's so creepy to think about, doctor's offices being specifically targeted. And it comes right back down to all of these issues with, designer drugs and the reason why our healthcare system is so messed up is we have drug companies that have incredibly good sales techniques and advertising and what have you, and their focus is much more on, business than it is on helping people. And there needs to be a much better balance on that.
Okay, let me do a mini rant. Here's the thing. Now, anyone who extends credit can usually obtain a credit report for someone. If you take this, on this argument, I don't see how it's legal for companies to share credit history. You can move in to a new apartment, and you can pick up your cell phone and order a landline for your a phone for your new apartment or home. You don't sign anything; they just cut your phone on. Used to be the same thing with cable. I think they would just cut you on, and other utilities, electric, whatever. Mm-hmm. Well, these utilities can report you to the credit bureau if you're late, and you can make an argument. How can they? You can argue against that because did you ever agree to a terms of service that said that they could share your payment history with a credit bureau? Because you never. I mean, maybe now they get you to sign something, or you have to log in on the internet. I don't know. But typically for electricity, you give them your social security number on the phone and that sort of thing.
But every bill goes into your credit history, though. It's just the way it is. The only reason I have an excellent credit history is because I pay my student loan payments, and they're so high, and I do it every month on time. That's just, it's just the way it is. I think there's a big difference between credit history and prescription history. How I just don't see how it's beneficial. It's beneficial for them because they can do targeted marketing, whereas, credit histories are beneficial because you can tell whether or not someone's going to be able to pay you. I think there's a huge difference there. I also think that, if these states decided that they wanted to pass these laws, that is totally a states' right thing for them to do so. I think that it's hard for me to see that the Supreme Court decided that this was unconstitutional.
Well, I just think it's an interesting situation where you could be a person who, we know, we're adults, we know about credit bureau and things like that, but you just turned 18, you got your first apartment in college, and legally they can do it, but you could have a situation where someone obtains it, is late in a payment, and never had any idea that this information would be shared. It seems like we're so anal, you can't, like with FOIA laws, the government protects itself to the nth degree. So it's so difficult. We have this one case where, and I'll look this up while you talk. I'm going to try to find this case of this government that is trying to charge hundreds of thousands of dollars for a CD of information. But it just seems that on things like that are personnel matters, there was a police case where a state trooper rammed into a car. The witnesses said that in Virginia that the state trooper was flying like a bat out of hell, no lights, no siren, nothing, just going crazy fast. Again, the witnesses, there's no verification. So we called because this became an issue because he hit a car, and they ended up blaming the guy was drinking and drunk. So of course he got blamed, and the trooper, they just so I called and I said, well, is there any way? Don't you keep track of the speed the trooper was going? Was he going 90 or was he going 35? And is it appropriate for him to be going 90 with no lights and sirens on a busy street with a bunch of gas station exits and stuff? And they said it was a personnel matter, it was all secret. They didn't have to release any of that. And so we ran a headline, "State Secrets," with a picture of a state trooper vehicle, because, but so that they can keep that secret, but then some kid, with his first bill, he's late, it gets reported. I'm not saying it shouldn't be reported. I'm just saying it's interesting privacy issue that you never signed anything agreeing to those terms, and now your payment history associated with your Social Security number is being released to other companies and processed, and I suppose open to hacking attacks or whatever. I don't know. It's an interesting situation. What are your thoughts?
Well, once again, I think this is totally different from the prescription drug case. I mean, if we're talking FOIA problems, yeah, there's tons of FOIA problems, and I could go on for ages on that. I actually worked for a while as a research assistant for the New England First Amendment Center and came across tons of FOIA cases that were just, dumb, to be honest. But, I mean, when you get down to sharing data, I guess the big thing that you have to look at is, why is the data being shared? I mean, it's important that the Freedom of Information Act exists so that journalists such as myself and Dan can get copies of papers that the public needs to know about, so that they can keep track of the government and the people that we as taxpayers employ to do things for us. But when you get down to this Supreme Court decision, I mean, the reason that they give for doing it is that the drug companies have a right to the data. And that's really, I was just reading up a little bit more on this, and the Vermont in particular was stating that the reason why they made their law to begin with was to help keep down healthcare costs and to protect doctors from these very targeted marketing campaigns that could potentially pressure them, and whether it's the drug company itself or administrators at wherever they're working, pressure them to make decisions that are not in the interest of their patient's health or finances, but instead in the interests of, the medical business in general. And the Supreme Court actually wrote in its decision that that by saying those reasons that Vermont chose were nothing, quote, nothing more than a difference in opinion from what the drug companies wanted to do with the data.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. The decision to me comes down on the side of, not wanting to regulate things and favoring business over regulation, which, there's always a time and a place for that. But when it comes to your personal medication data, I mean, do you want a drug company knowing what pills you take so that they can market a more expensive version of your pill to your doctor? I mean, that's...
I don't know. I remember when the government was trying to prevent people. I don't know if it's legal now to go to Canada to get a cheaper prescription, or Mexico. I think, don't they organize these trips where you can go? It's like a bus trip or something.
With the Palins.
Did they do it? Oh,
or
was that?
Don't you remember that coming out? Yeah, Sarah Palin and her family buy drugs from Canada all the time.
Really?
Yeah, it came out during the campaign. It totally got shoveled under the rug.
Oh, odd, because the media's all over it.
Yeah.
Over them. Okay, this is a great story. This will. This is incredibly stupid, ironically done by a government. Okay, this is from Cleveland.com. Journalists have elbowed into Cuyahoga County's dispute over the cost of CDs loaded with deeds and mortgages, arguing that the public should have the databases at cost. The county wants to charge more than $200,000 for CDs of property records, based on a state law that mandates a $2 per page fee to photocopy or fax documents. Officials have spent nearly $25,000 in tax dollars on lawyers to defend that position. Fine to journalism organizations say, but the CDs aren't paper and they're not photocopies. This case, quote, "This case is not terribly complicated," writes the Ohio Newspaper Association. The Cuyahoga County recorder is not making a photocopy of any record, and it cannot therefore charge a fee that would make a valuable database inaccessible to the public. The association joined the Arlington, Virginia-based Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press and the Ohio Land Title Association in filing briefs this week in the Ohio Supreme Court. The journalism organizations are getting involved now, they say, because of the potential ramifications. If the court decides the county can charge $2 per page on CDs, journalists would not be able to afford databases that make analysis and investigative journalism possible. I've not seen anything this idiotic in a really long time, Reporters Committee attorney Lucy Dalgish said in a phone interview. You really have to work hard to interpret a statute that badly. And the dispute began last year when the then county recorder Lillian Green first took the position. The documents kept by her office are not public records as defined by the state's public records law. Therefore, she said copies did not have to be provided to citizens at cost. Despite the fact that dozens of Ohio counties charge pocket change for CDs of property records, Green cited the $2 per page law that mandates half of the money be sent to the county and half to a state housing trust fund. A copy is a copy is a copy, the county attorney David Movius said in March. David Movius, you are a moron, and you should be out of office. This title information companies sued the county. Two title, blah, blah, blah. What are your thoughts?
Bureaucracy. Can you say it with me?
Stupid. This is ridiculous.
And it just comes down to the fact that bureaucrats, A, love their rules, and B, get really nervous when reporters start sniffing around their records. And I mean, I've been to city halls and gotten ridiculous answers to my questions for information, and they'll go to any means necessary to stop you from doing it. Like, for example, copy machines in the basement that don't have any change makers next to them, or, I mean, there's all kinds of weird little bureaucratic tricks to keep reporters from information, and this is just ridiculous. And I want to add that the Ohio Newspaper Association are a bunch of really hardcore together people, and they're gonna fight this, and they're gonna handle it. This is one of the first groups that decided that they were going to try to go without the Associated Press, and they banded together to start sharing stories within their own little AP-esque group of newspapers in Ohio. And I think that if they had the cojones to do that
what are those? I'm just kidding.
that they can definitely, I mean, this is good luck, Cuyahoga County. I've actually been there before. It's very nice. Lots of rivers.
Are you pronouncing it correctly? Because I wasn't.
It's Cuyahoga, I think.
Cuyahoga? Is it named after a Native American group, perhaps? I don't know. Something.
Maybe. But Wikipedia says that the river that runs through Cuyahoga County, which is the Cuyahoga River, is famous for being the river that caught on fire. And it is from the Native Americans. It means winding water.
How did a river catch on fire?
It was so polluted that it caught on fire. I think is how this story goes.
Wow.
Yeah.
How embarrassing.
It's one of the big things that started the 60s environmental movement. But Radiohead played there, and it was an excellent concert. They have a great outdoor... Anyway, totally off topic. But yeah, good luck. Good luck fighting the Ohio Newspaper Association. Those guys have their stuff together.
Yeah, that's a bit of a stretch. But I mean, I guess they look at it like journalists are hostile, and in this case, I would be very hostile to this. I think that they're idiots. I mean, they're defending an indefensible position, and God, I hope they lose. I'm sure they'll lose. If they don't lose, they should lose. People should rise up, because if you don't have nosy reporters snooping around, then you're going to have situations like that town in California where the administration was paying themselves hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and nobody knew about it. You know, it's just absolutely. It was a little tiny town, and everyone was making six figures. And
it's ridiculous to try to stick to outdated laws like they're doing. I mean, actually, this is just to tie in a little local trivia. The city council in Lynchburg recently was talking about the fact that there's probably a good amount of stuff in the bylaws that just have no relevancy anymore, like stuff about horses and just it's all and the funny stuff that you'll find in different municipalities like that. And it just comes down to the fact that no one takes the time to look at it. The problem here is that it was an outdated policy that no one looked at, and now they're sticking to it instead of updating it and keeping with the times. It's ridiculous, really.
Okay, in a moment of desperation, I'm going to look at Reuters' odd news. Let's see here. Intimate piercing earns Melbourne player red card. What's your choice, Emily? Botox and texting may not mix? That's got to be interesting. Why don't you go to mobile.reuters.com while I look at it. We'll find here. Sarah Palin says jury duty comes before bus tour. She's a good patriot there. But there's one interesting story. Yahoo chairman voices support for CEO Carol Bartz while Emily's looking for some weird thing. You found it, right? Mobile.reuters.com, and then you can look under odd news or whatever.
I gotcha.
It's just a convenient without all the crap. Okay, so the chairman of Yahoo Incorporated voiced support for Chief Executive Carol Bartz, who has become a lightning rod for criticism as the company struggles with stagnant revenue growth and a rift with its Chinese partner. Yahoo's efforts to mount a turnaround remain a work in progress, said Chairman Roy Bostock at the company's annual shareholder meeting on Thursday. You know, Yahoo's problem, they have several. They do a lot of stuff right. I've been a customer of theirs for a long time. I was one of their first web email domain name customers, and they are big. They have different departments, and I got into a situation where they cut our mail off for our biggest newspaper in the chain, and it was like 4 days. And I finally published on an open letter on the web on all 3 newspaper websites. If you Google an open letter to Yahoo small business and McDermott, you'll find it. And finally, as soon as I put it up there, it went everywhere. And then I was getting all these calls from these folks, and they fixed it in like 20 minutes. But it was so unnecessary, and they weren't working weekends. The engineers who dealt with this stuff only worked weekdays. And then the executive level support lied to me and said, "Oh, well, that's outrageous. Who told you that?" And I said, "What do you mean? You can call any tech support person and tell that." So they lied to me. They just delivered who cares service. And I was just on the phone with a guy yesterday. He called me about this. And this, he's like, "Oh, well, we're trying to fix this." And I said, "Well, this is from last May, so 13 months ago, and you still suck." So, and I was spending $792 a month or a year on my Yahoo stuff, which is way too much for what I was getting. And as soon as I can just get rid of them, I'm going to do it. And then one day I'll rant about Sprint, which erased all my voicemails once by accident and had a copy and wouldn't give it to me. It sounds outrageous and ridiculous, but it's true, and I'll go into that later when we have time. So, Emily, what you got?
The weird news is really boring. We could talk Afghanistan. Obama.
We can talk Afghanistan and Obama. You don't want to talk about the chef catches flack for treated tap water? An Australian chef has received a chilly reception for charging diners for treated tap water and ditching boutique bottled water, which he termed wasteful, for an eco-friendly option.
Yeah, but why is he charging them for the tap water?
I don't know. Isn't it an island? It's...
Australia?
Yeah.
Is an island, but it's a big island. It
is big. People
it's
think
a
it's
continent.
a small country because they have, how do I say this diplomatically? They have a limited impact on world events. And they have lots of sharks and cool animals, But Australia is almost the same size as the contiguous United States. They just have far fewer people, and much of the land is not habitable by humans. Mm-hmm. I think they have a feral pig problem, where there's areas that are overrun with these feral pigs. Am I pronouncing that right?
Feral? Yeah, feral? Totally. I've never heard about this before.
Yeah, it's all the talk. These pigs, they're it's really interesting. They're running all over this area, and they breed like rabbits, and so there's all these pigs, and they can't shoot them quick enough. And they're not good. Your first thought would be eat them, but they're full of worms. They're so they can't be eaten. So they're of no use. Feral pigs, of course, being formerly domesticated pigs and their offspring, which have been released on purpose or accidentally, and have now overrun this area. Think of Australia. But I would think water wouldn't cost that much in an island, right?
It depends on where Australia gets their water from. I assume they're using desalinization of some sort, but who knows? I have some real news. and it's national news, but it's skewed a little towards the Boston side. Boston's longtime legendary mobster Whitey Bulger was arrested. I think
That was
it's
one
today.
of your readers, right?
Whitey?
Yeah.
I hope Whitey read my
In Boston,
stuff.
when you worked for the Boston Globe.
I bet Whitey read the Herald. For those that don't know, the Herald is the lesser
she
newspaper
left
in
the lowly
Boston.
Boston Globe for the Lynchburg Times.
Yeah, right.
And because her rich boyfriend had to come to Lynchburg.
But yeah, for those of you that don't know, Whitey is Boston's mob. He's the face of it. And what was it? Maybe 2 or 3 years ago, they arrested most of his crew, and now they've got him. And it's so... Boston's underbelly is something that I don't think a lot of people know about, but I know that
Underbelly?
Underbelly. Besides the political corruption and the police corruption, I think that the mobster underbelly. I guess now
You're
that
not suggesting corruption in government in
not at all,
Massachusetts.
not at all. But yeah, for those of you who haven't seen it, go see The Town. It'll fill you right up to speed on all of the nasty doings in Boston.
What are your thoughts? Fox News, I think, was saying that, or Drudge, it's really interesting. The right, President Obama's speech, the right was saying that he is ignoring his general's advice and pulling out too quickly. And Chris Matthews on the other political spectrum was saying he's turning into a hawk from a dove. So I'm like, okay, what do you think? He said, I think in a nutshell, 10,000 fairly quickly and 30,000 by next summer to completely eliminate the surge that he implemented.
23,000 more next summer.
Yeah, so it was a 33,000 surge in 2009, which cost him some political capital, not as much as the healthcare thing did in retrospect, but that will have long-term benefits as those benefits start kicking in before the election.
Yeah. The Washington Post is reporting that Admiral Michael Mullen, who's the chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, says that he's down with it. That thinks that it's more aggressive than he thought that it was going to be, and he's a little worried that it might result that it might be more dangerous. But at the same time, he thinks that it'll work, and he supports it. So there's one big military mind in Obama's corner.
My set's nicer than yours.
Yeah, what am I going to do?
You know,
you're the publisher and I'm just a reporter, Dan.
No, I'm just in this beautiful. I'm looking here. I've got this cool thing going, and you're up. But you were going to Skype in, and then at the last minute, she's actually in the room next to me, right, facing a wall, and she doesn't line her head up.
It's because you have me cropped. Sorry. There we go. You'll get to see my awesome at-home set in the near future. It's pretty amazing with a real plant.
She was mocking my plant earlier. I was.
You'd have to see the shot, guys. Go. I think you still have that video on Dan's YouTube channel. Scroll down, and you'll see this great picture of him with like long bangs and this TV set with fake plants in the background. It's priceless.
Well, I have. Excuse me. I have 16,000 views on that video. I was just having a bad hair day.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with the reporting, but if you're going to talk about my background, I'm going to make fun of your fake plants. So
she makes sport of my hair. But I'll got to find out what this is about. Botox and texting may not mix. We got to see what. And why don't you look up the intimate? Okay, you do the. Find out what the intimate piercing story is. I want to look at this Botox story.
Okay. We'll see who wins. Who has the coolest story.
Right. I don't know. The intimate piercing I'm basically doing just to embarrass you because it's probably embarrassing. Anyone contemplating Botox treatments for excessive sweating might want to consider the case of a U.S. teenager. I didn't know Botox did that. A 17-year-old girl, a typical whiz at sending text messages from her phone, had Botox injections to control excessive sweating on her palms. And afterwards, she couldn't text. Doctors who use Botox said they have never heard complaints of texting impairments from patients. A new warning. We should have a government commission study that. But they added that it wasn't entirely unexpected since the injections have been linked to muscle weakness. I would definitely discuss this with my patients going forward as a specific potential side effect, said one doctor who treated the teen. The case shows the importance of thinking about modern-day activities and how our treatments could potentially impair some of these modern-day activities, such as texting. Okay. So tell me about the, that's a who cares story.
Well, the intimate piercing is actually on a dude. So that pretty much narrows down where the intimate area could be. But apparently he told the ref that he had taken it out. And it's an amateur soccer player from Melbourne. So, like, no one you'll know.
Oh, no. He didn't get injured, did he? What happened? Tell the gory details. Are there photos?
Let's see. During the first half, our player was struck in the groin by the ball and left the field to receive attention. At this point, the referee became aware that he had a body piercing. So it doesn't look like he was actually hurt by his piercing, but somewhere in there, the ref got a glance of the goods and found out it was still there, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's a job. I need you to check all these piercings, all these folks, make sure there's no... All right, we're obviously nearing the end of the program. An Australian chef has received a chilly reception for charging diners for treated tap water and ditching boutique bottled water, which he termed wasteful, for an eco-friendly option. Mark Best, chef and owner of Marquee Restaurant in Sydney, turned years of environmental consciousness into action by splashing out on a $6,000 Italian-made water system that filters, chills, and carbonates tap water. The first of its kind. And, just drink the tap water. I mean, it's, the stuff it goes through. Yeah. They don't just pump it from the river. They have to test it constantly. It's just, there's nothing wrong with tap water. Now, if you have a well and you don't have a filter, yeah. He charges.
And he's in Sydney, so it's not like he's out in the boondocks of Australia.
He now charges $5 Australian, which is close to US. But this includes unlimited refills. Man, he used to charge $10 for 500 milliliters.
If our people are complaining, is this the problem? That's dumb. They could just not go to his restaurant. Who cares? If this is a bad business decision for him, then yeah, sure, don't go to his restaurant. And
who the hell pays $5 for water? Is this one of those places like a Rolex watch you want to be seen there? Or I guess if you're loaded and you can spend stupid money on food, good for you.
Oh, yeah. It depends. I actually have a great story about paying $5 for a bottle of water. Ryan and I had made reservations at this restaurant in Portland, Maine, that was supposedly really excellent. And we made them several months in advance. So we told them it was for our anniversary. So it was like an occasion. We were hoping for a great table. And we showed up on time, maybe 5 minutes beforehand. And they didn't have a table ready for us. And then when they finally they sat us in the middle of this horribly crowded room at a tiny, tiny table. And a waiter immediately came over and cracked open a bottle of water, poured it for us. And then within the next 3 minutes, we were accosted, which would be the best word for it, by, I want to say, at least 3 different waiters, each asking us very pushedly what we wanted to drink besides water, and kind of trying to force us to order, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with, more fancy restaurants, but you often have to peruse a wine list that looks more like a book than a menu. So it takes a while to decide on what bottle of wine you want. So, but the end of the story is we decided to walk out. We were so horrified by the service and the terrible, atmosphere of the restaurant that we decided to leave. And we got up and we went to the hostess, asked for our coats, and she gave them to us and then informed us we needed to pay for the bottle of water they had opened for us.
Could you buy it by the glass?
Well, we were never asked. They just opened the bottle. It was really ludicrous. And I think
this is what Yelp was made for. Those sites, I would
Yeah,
have
exactly.
spent hours and hours trashing them. I mean, I would have caused a scene. I would have lost my famous cool.
Yeah, we were more concerned at just getting out of there. And granted, I mean, we were facing the problem where we were both 21 at the time. And, it's probably a little atypical for 21-year-olds to enjoy fine food and wine, but they were treating us like dirt. And we had money to spend there, and we ended up walking down the street and spending it at 4th Street, which is one of the most excellent restaurants I've ever been to. So, in the end, it turned out all right. But, man, paying $5 for a bottle of water that you didn't even drink is just, it's not okay.
No, but it's tourist town or something? So they don't care? Or?
I don't know why. They had a lot of business. There were a lot of people there. But I think it was just our age. I really think that both of us look young still.
You're both young.
And we were both 21, and they had this rotating wait staff that every single one of them was really rude to us. And it just was bad.
What's the name of this place again?
The Bad Restaurant? I don't remember. It's an address. It's like 9 something Front Street or something. I really don't know. But it was horrible.
All right, I have an interesting topic. In our last couple minutes, what do we have left? We have 2 minutes and 20 seconds. So let's call it 2 minutes because I got to end a little early, or the lady goes like 10 seconds. Okay, Harry Potter. Are you a Harry Potter nut?
I read the Harry Potter books when they first came out. When the Harry Potter books came out, I was the same age as the characters. That dates me quite a bit.
And you still are.
I'm not, because they delayed the books and because of the movies, and it's all messed up.
You're the same age as the actors.
I am
They have not
probably
been
the
delayed
same age
chronologically.
as the actors.
Okay,
Yeah,
the 7 Harry Potter novels will be available as ebooks in October, according to author Janet Rowling.
JK.
Whatever. They just did that so that the boys would buy the book because they wouldn't buy a book from a woman, so they thought. Rowling gave her clearest indication yet that she would not write an 8th Harry Potter story to follow the final installment published in 2007. I do have closure with Harry. This brings up a whole thing, the topic of fan fiction, because there's a lot of folks
90 seconds.
A lot of folks don't want closure, but you can't legally. Let's say there was someone out there who could write. Let's say she dropped dead tomorrow. They still own the copyright to the whole concept. So a lot of people would be just love, and it'd be good. It makes kids read. But if someone could write in the same vein and continue the storyline or do some prequels or something, that would be illegal by copyright law. But everybody except the copyright owners would like that.
60 seconds.
It's
That's
her,
the whole thing.
Yeah, but it's her book. She can do what she wants. She's an author. I don't think authors have a ton of money or rights anyway. J.K. Rowling obviously does. But on a whole, authors don't, writers don't fare well in that area. So I think if she was successful and it's her creative masterpiece, she can end it when she wants. I think that any merchandising that she's done from it obviously has given people plenty of opportunities to make a lot of money off of her books, and by wanting someone else to write another book is dumb.
All right. Hey, thanks so much, Emily. We'll be back. I'll be back tomorrow at 3:00, hopefully with Emily. I don't know if you're. We'll see. To be announced. I'll be here. Hey, thanks for watching so much. We appreciate it. Have a great day.
10 seconds. Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.